Hi, this is Arthur, and today we're talking about stalking behavior and the comparison between mainland China and the United Kingdom. And this is our agenda. First, we introduction about the stalking behavior and find out some stalking case in the mainland and also happen in the United Kingdom, and case comparison and the comparison of the characteristic between mainland and the United Kingdom. Then discussion and suggestion. Final is conclusion. So what is stalking behaviors? Stalking behaviors no universal definition for the word stalking alone. Stalking can be interpreted as an unwanted attention and repeated, which interrelated to the harassment and intimidation. The offender following the monitoring the target victim two or more several times. The stalkers, based on the Nolan research, there are 5 types. First is the rejected stalker, which have some close relationship with the victim, such as friends or family. They are reverse correct, avenge, or rejection to the victim. And offender most characteristic is as a self-centered and the feeling of luxurious. Second is resentful stalkers. They feel humiliated that the relationship has been ended by the victim. At that time, they show some verbally assault and violence behavior. The third is the intimacy stalkers. They're seeking for the intimate relationship with the victim. So they're frequently phone calling and writing a letter and keep finding the house like that. Even the victim is not has the relationship with the stalkers, but the stalker believes they are in the relationship. So when the victim finds some new relationship with others, the offender changes to their feeling as a jealous and violent. Number 4 is about the incompetent of cheaters is they have some kind of inadequate social skills. They have similar to the intimacy stalkers, but they are not seeking for the intimate relationship. They're looking for the short-term relationships such as sexual partners. So their stalking behavior only provide in the belief period of time. So it's much shorter periods than the intimacy stalkers. The last one is predatory stalkers. It seeks power and sexual gratification and the more surveillance to track the victim. And mental health conditions also often appear to the offenders, which is antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and also narcissistic personality disorder. The race stalking between United Kingdom and China, there is about 1 in 5 women and 1 in 12 men, which happen in UK, and about 1 in 10 women and 1 in 28 men happen in China.
In August 2019, a murder case happened in Jiaxing, Zhejiang province, mainland China. In this case, the ex-boyfriend stalked and killed his ex-girlfriend in his undergrad garage. The girl on the right is the victim Xu, who was only 20 years old when she was killed by her ex-boyfriend. And her ex-boyfriend Lu is a criminal. They kept a love relationship for half a year at the beginning of 2019. In the love relationship, Lu had chatted many times, so she proposed to break up. But Lu showed that he loved Xu deeply, so he proposed to get back together many times after breaking up. And they were all rejected, so he was killed, and he was only 25 years old when he committed the crime. According to the insiders, Lu chatted on her and participated in gambling problems many times during her love affair. After the relationship between them ended, Lu stalked and harassed Xu many times. After she blocked Lu's social media, Lu begged Xu's friend to send her whereabouts to herself and arrive at Xu's location with a knife. After failing to get back together, Lu dragged Xu to the undergrad garage and stabbed Xu in the neck with a knife, resulting in his death. Subsequently, Lu surrendered himself to the public security bureau and was sentenced to the death in the jail.
This is a stalking case which happened in the United Kingdom called the Alice Luger stalking case. It happened on the October 12, 2016 in the UK. Alice was 24 years old when she was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. Offender Tremont Harley Dillon is the Alice's ex-boyfriend, who is a soldier serving with 2 scouts at the Penny Creek and the south of Edinburgh, and he met Alice through the online. And after that, they began to the relationship in 2016. The behavior during the relationship, he being the critical of her appearance and want to control her life, even though her friend and the family who want to control her related people, and also control her social media such as Facebook by changing the password. When Alice informed to him to end about their relationship, he commit the stalking activities. like keep calling and leave the voice message and text the email with different phones. And he shows some aggressive and threatening to the Alice, and he want to kill by Ling himself, and also contact her family and friends, and destroy her new relationship. And he keep visit Alice's house and repeatedly rang her doorbell. But how Alice Lucas died? When Truman Howard Dillon, after they keep commit stalking activity, he climbed into the Alice house through the window and picked up the kitchen knife and slashed her throat at least 6 times. And Alice suffered 24 injuries. After that, Dillon was prosecuted and sentenced to 22 years in the prison.
When we look for the similarities between the cases, for both cases, there are male offenders and female victims who had previously dated. Everyone were in their 20s, and there were instances which the offender had cheated on the victim, and the victim had tried to leave this relationship. Both victims have been stalked similarly by getting many phone calls and being followed, and unfortunately, they're dead by similar means, which they were both stabbed. So according to previous research, these offenders were resentful stalkers and intimacy stalkers. When looking into the offender's characteristics, we do not find relevant signs of Lu being a psychopath, as he was resentful and confessed to the police after the murder. But as for Dylan, he fits the criteria for psychopathy, as he has used threats to release compromising photographs of his victim. And he said that he was not used to being denied what belonged to him, and he even tried to frame the victim for attacking him first, and he killed her by self-defense. And according to another research, these behaviors were known to fit for psychopathy, as they were manipulative. And this offender has a lack of anxiety and remorse, and he did not care for other people's feelings apart from his own. And as for the goal pursuit level, Lu's, his goals were simpler, as he was satisfied with just taking the victim's life. But Dylan's case was more complex, as he had not taken the victim's life the first chance that he had, and he continuously had been breaking in and out of her house, and even to one point he left chocolates and flowers in her house to demonstrate his obsession and possessiveness, to toy with her emotions. So one reason to suggest was that he was a soldier, and that according to previous research, soldiers value endurance and persistence, particularly in impossible goals. The reason that I stress on goals is that according to the relational goal pursuit theory, we have an assumption that all relationships satisfied desirable and feasible goals by human nature, and they were in a hierarchical structure, which the lower level ones are more easier to achieve than the higher level ones, but they're necessary before we move up. But should any case these goals be too unachievable, then the individual will be quite sad and afraid of it before they abandon it. On the left, there's an example of the hierarchy of goals, which I have wrote to, and for a relationship is that a more low order goal is that two people are together because they do not want to be lonely before they move up to develop common interests, and they've been happy because they have found each other and they share similar interests. And if we look into our case analysis, then Lu's hierarchy was less time consuming and more straightforward, is that the ability to control the victim immediately has a linkage to his happiness. But for Dylan, his case was more time consuming and more complex, is he's not only satisfied by having the victim's physical being, which is her life, but he also wished to manipulate her mental and her mind, which is also her feelings. And he aimed to manipulate her feelings and her life before he is satisfied.
In mainland China, in essence, it's still a male-dominated society, and the social states of men and women is still improving and changing. Therefore, to a large extent, men still retain a sense of self-ownership towards women who have had a relationship after breaking up, thinking that what they have done to their ex-girlfriends is a reasonable scope, and at the same time, women don't have a strong sense of self-protection in the relationship. Because of the education of harmless culture, they don't have a clear attitude towards stalking and fight back, which leads to this tragedy.
On the other hand, for the UK, which is more an individualist country, it values more personal characteristics and choices. So for stalking cases, more is focused on the harms of it to the individual. There is no official definition for stalking, as what matters or what harms an individual matters differently to each person. However, stalking is known to be analogous to harassment, and this problem is viewed very seriously to each person. Whereas comparatively to mainland China, more have to worry about the social stigma and effect to the general community as a whole.
In China, there is no clear checking law, and the simple checking is not illegal. However, if you repeatedly send obscene, insulting, threatening, and other information in the process of checking and interfere with the normal life of others, peeping, secretly talking pictures, eavesdropping, and spreading others' privacy, it's a violation of public security administration. However, it has already violated the law to check others for allegedly infringing their privacy rights. But whether you are published by the law depends on the specific circumstances.
There is no legal definition for stalking in the UK, and the criteria is that how it involves fear of violence or serious alarm or distress. So the maximum sentence is 10 years in custody, and if there is racial or religious information involved, then it will be a little bit higher for 14 years. So the key factor is that the accountability lies in the sophistication and the damages caused to the victims by these stalking events. However, if we look back for the cases that we use as examples, they were eventually charged with murder. That means that both offenders were never charged with any loss as mentioned in these pages. So for the Chinese victim, he was charged with murder and was sentenced to death. And for the UK offender, he was charged for murder and sentenced to 22 years in prison. So if we look into 22 years in prison and death penalty, so both of these penalties are much, much more serious than any of this listed here for 2 years or 3 years or even 10 years. And we can see that these stalking laws were not able to hold them accountable for their actions before it can worsen till precious lives were lost. Hence, we now move on to the difficulties to implement stalking laws.
If the victim reports to the public security department, the local police may ask, but if there is no conclusive evidence, the stalker may not be published. At best, he will give a verbal warning. If the victim appears, he will be followed or harassed. But if the evidence is insufficient, the court will be not accepted.
And for the case in the United Kingdom, just like with restraining orders, the behaviors that stalking laws aim to prevent are the very behavior prerequisite for these laws to take place. That means, ideally, there should be some sort of more mild stalking activities that victims can record and collect evidence to report to the police or other legal authorities so that they can catch the offenders at an earlier stage before precious lives are lost. But this is rarely the case because evidence are very hard to collect. Another research indicated that more than half stalking victims suffer psychologically from their experiences, but psychological experiences are very hard to get evidence from, as there is no standardized test to measure the types and degrees of psychological trauma. And this varies hugely from person to person due to their difference in background and education and many other factors. Henceforth, for both countries, China and the UK, these cases are very difficult to be proven in court and very difficult for legal authorities to intervene because of that.
For the discussion part, discussion number 1, how to prevent the stalking in the future. Legal management of stalkers, such as anti-stalking legislation and conjunction with the prosecuting agencies. It should be applied the training program into legal institutions such as stalking risk profile, which conducts with the 5 stalker type based on the Mulan research, and it is a risk assessment tool to understand the personal circumstances and how their behavior is risk, and more aware of danger and the complexities of the stalking behaviors. Discussion number 2 is programs that tackle stalkers. Multi-agency stalking intervention program. It is the risk management intervention of a medium to high risk stalking offenders. So it's more related to the UK, based on the Alice ex-boyfriend case, and this program supports the detection and treatment and prevention of stalking, and it collaborates partnership between health, social care, criminal justice agencies, and victim advocacy service. It helps to improve about offender problem solving, decision-making skills, self-regulation skills. It helps to understand stalking behavior considered as criminal is a stalking behavior and with the coping mechanism. So this program not only provides some therapy program to the offender, also provides some advocacy service to victim. So discussion number 3 is therapeutic approach for the stalker and victim. This is the dialectical behavior therapy called DBT, and it's the cognitive behavior management intervention. Is to teach people how to live in the moment, regulation, emotion, and improve their relationship is more related to the borderline personality disorder offenders. This kind of therapy have 4 types of the process. One is the development of the mindfulness skills, live in the moment and concentrate to use feeling and sensation. It helps to calm down by healthy coping skill to avoid the negative behavior, such as jealous to their partner relationship or some negative feeling about when they commit the crime. The second is distress of tolerance, accept current situation by intense emotion and empower. Third is interpersonal effectiveness, learn to listen and communicate with others. It improves their social skills. And fourth is emotion regulation, help to identify, name, and change individual emotion and reduce individuals' emotion vulnerability and cope with the negative feeling, such as reduce their risk and also reduce their negative feeling, kind of the violence behavior or some serious feeling, and cope with some the positive image. Discussion for risk assessment for stalking and reoffense. The risk needs and the responsibility model, which called the RNR, it addresses specific chronogenic dynamic risk factors to predict the reoffending risk level. The risk is referred to the intensity of treatment and to match the level of risk the individual may pose to others or themselves. So there are 2 types of risk factor. One is static risk factor, is about the offender's criminal history and the offender's age at the first offense. The second is dynamic risk factor. It is the accommodation and the employment status, education level, and attitude. The treatment also focused on the chronogenic needs because needs directly related to the recidivism, and such as the substance abuse and have been shown to be high in the stalking population should be targeted. So individual responsibility also is the matching the most appropriate form of the treatment to the offender characteristic for the high level of engagement. So internal response, which relate to the intellectual functioning and the self-esteem and the motivation level, and external response, which conduct with the therapeutic relationship, environmental support, and the program contents. Is considerable evidence has been emphasized the importance for the intervention and this principle model to reduce recidivism of the reoffending behavior and in various offender population in the stalking behavior. So this is the several limitation and suggestion. Limitation time commitment for the offender who willing to attend and complete the task. It depends on the offender, how offenders, how willing to participation in the assessment. And second is lack of resource or lack of expertise, because stalking is a new type of criminal behavior. So there was no specification of the stalker type for the other case. Limited support since treatment only operated by the mental health professionals. Third is high policing cost, high psychological cost. Psychological cost is kind of the mental or the kind of emotional distress by the victims. The first is more reliant on the practitioner's memories, which could under or overestimate the time and the resources, because it depends on we spend more time to process the risk management, which offenders must be complex and which offenders more simple. So it depends on the types. The intervention program will be some different and will be time management should be concerned. So therefore, suggestion, more regular intervention to stalking behavior benefit all agents must be involved, not only for the stalker's victims, but also police and courts to manage the service and manage the cost. The second is the professional experts and academia can conduct research and ensure the dissemination of information, such as of kind of forensic psychologists. They provide and the research more kind of the information to preventing about the stalking behavior. They share to the information to other or agencies to sharing the information and participation together to develop their intervention mode. So this is our conclusion. So stalking behavior comparison already shown by between mainland and the United Kingdom, and that both offenders have different characteristics. And that there are different intervention and treatments also for preventing the stalking behavior, also have some several limitation. So for the conclusion, so we already so this is the general public, especially stalkers and past victims should be trained for the risk assessment, and experts instruct so clinicians, also law enforcement agents, judiciary, policy makers, and the general public agencies to develop the more intervention program and the kind of therapy models. So this is our references. And thank you for listening our presentation. If you have any questions, just send us by email. Thank you.